All right, my neighbor is playing music, so let's see if we can get this video in before he starts playing again. Hi everyone, it's me. Have you ever found yourself standing in the UK customs area? You're in the queue to see a border agent and you think, wow, I'm terrified, because I do every single time. Today we are going to talk about what actually happens when you enter the UK for the first time on a visa. Now, you may not realize that the first time you enter the UK is actually quite different to all of the other times. And if you are like me, I am deeply terrified of UK border agents. So it is something that is always very stressful to me. And I have a couple personal stories I thought I could share. So today, let's talk about border agents. So without further ado, let's go. Now, just for some background, I have been on 3 separate UK visas plus 1 renewal. So I know my way around a UK visa application. Let me tell you, that in itself is very stressful. But I've also done my first entry to the UK on a new visa a couple of times. Now, the biggest difference is that you have to actually speak to somebody when you arrive in the UK. So for a lot of the larger UK airports, they have these new terminal thingies, these new electronic border entry things. It kind of looks like when you're at a train station, you know, and you like put your ticket in and you walk through the barrier. It's kind of like that, but as a border crossing thing. Now, I love those and I use them all the time when I travel, but when you enter on a visa for the first time, you gotta avoid those and you gotta get into the queue to see a border agent. Now, I have had instances where there's been like someone working, sort of walking the floor. They see my blue Canadian passport and they say, oh no, you don't need to get in the queue, you can go through the terminals. That's not true because I am entering on a UK visa, so just make sure you tell them if that happens to you. Say, oh, well, I'm entering on a visa for the first time, and then they should be like, oh, okay, never mind, don't go through the terminals. But I have had it where some of them have tried to push me through, and I'm like, no, that's not for me. I should also mention that in the past, for me at least, I have had to fill out a passenger landing card. They're kind of like doing away with this in a lot of different countries, but in my experience, I still had to do it. They usually don't hand them out on the flight anymore, but they should be in the big customs like room. They should be off to the side. So make sure you bring a pen with you in your bag, fill out a card. I have always needed to, but it doesn't hurt to have it anyway. So when you get up to customs, you can give them your passport and your card, and then that's that. Now, I don't know all the logistics behind what the border agent actually does, but the idea is that you have to enter the UK within a certain window of your visa. We're not going to get into all the details because you will get your window when you actually do your application. However, you got to get in the UK in that window. And when you actually speak to the border agent, they do something on their computer that like activates it, or it like approves that you've entered the UK at the right time. I don't know what they do. I'm too afraid to ask, but they actually do, they do something. So that's why it's really important to speak to them when you enter the UK for the first time on a new visa. Does that make sense? Hi, it's me. I'm Alanna, the person in this video and that runs this YouTube channel. Hi, how's it going? If you like this video, would you like to subscribe? It really does help. Maybe leave a nice comment, give the video a thumbs up. You know the drill. Literally every YouTube video says the same thing. But if you want to do that for my channel, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you. Now, I do this really fun activity every time I get to UK Customs. I get to the UK border agent, that big room, and I'm standing in the queue, and I have this little internal monologue that happens. And basically, I become convinced that I have drugs on me. I know, I don't even do drugs. But I'm standing there like waiting to be called up, and I'm just thinking, what if they find drugs on me? Alanna, you don't have drugs on you. Yeah, but what if I do and I don't know that I have them on me and they find them and they don't let me in and then I have to go back to Canada? Like, what happens there? Maybe I get arrested. Maybe they delete or remove my visa. I don't know. Maybe they take away my visa. Maybe I end up in jail. But I know I don't have drugs on me, but maybe I do have drugs on me. Or maybe they wipe my passport and there's some sort of like drug residue on my passport. When was the last time I cleaned my passport? I don't think I've ever cleaned my passport, but I've traveled a lot, so the likelihood of me touching something or my passport touching something bad is like pretty high because I've never like wiped it down or cleaned it or anything. And if they find drugs on my passport, maybe they won't let me in. And this conversation happens every single time. Every time. So I think I have watched too many like border security type TV shows, but truly border agents scare me just absolutely terrified. And I think as well, it's kind of like the final hurdle when you have a UK visa. You've done all the scary stuff. Your visa application, you've paid an obscene amount of money. You've gone to a biometrics appointment. You've done all the really hard, scary bits. And the last final hurdle is to get through a border agent and get to the other side, enter the UK officially. And then I feel like you can finally kind of take that sigh of relief. But this is like the final countdown. And I always find it so stressful. So after you have that panicked conversation with yourself about having non-existent drugs on your person, you go up to the border agent and you just tell them you are entering for the first time on whatever visa you're entering on. A lot of people ask me, what kind of questions do they ask you? And honestly, not much. Because you already have approval to enter the UK, I have found that they ask you very little. If anything, they ask tourists far more questions because they're trying to figure out, why is this person coming here with you? They already know why you're coming here. You've got a visa, you've been approved for your visa, you've paid for your visa, so there's very little to ask you. I did have one where the woman asked me if I had a job lined up yet. I said no, but that visa was not dependent on having a job, so it really didn't matter. But overall, I am asked very little because I already have approval to be here and approval to enter. I think they usually take your fingerprint because your fingerprints will match your application and everything. And then that's pretty much it. They may remind you that you need to pick up your biometrics residence permit. It's a mouthful, I know. Basically, it is a card that looks almost identical to a British driver's license. It's the same shape and it is bright pink. And remember to guard this card with your life. I'm actually not sure where mine is. Alanna, when you're editing this video, remember to check where your card is. Basically, the border agent may remind you that you need to pick up your biometrics residence permit, BRP. Biometric resident, yeah, BRP. They won't give it to you, but you pick it up when you actually enter the UK, when you're actually in it. You know, you usually get it from the post office. So they may remind you to pick it up, and it is extremely important. Basically, it proves that you are allowed to be in the UK and you are allowed to work in the UK. So anytime I apply for something, a job, a flat, like any sort of serious application, I always have to show my biometric residence permit to prove that I am allowed to be here. It has my name and my date and the visa that I'm allowed. No, it has my name, it has the date that it expires, and it has the type of visa that I am on. So it is extremely important. Do not lose it. And every time you enter the UK, next time, wow, speaking is really difficult. All of the subsequent times you enter the UK, you need to have your biometric resident permit. Is it resident or residence? I kind of say either. Anyway, you gotta have your permit on you. So once they take your fingerprints, they look over your visa, they're happy, they do their mystery stuff on the computer. Not sure what they do, but they do something. Then you are free to enter. So the next step would just be to collect your luggage and get out of the airport, which is super, super exciting. And don't forget to pick up your permit within sort of the first week or two. Your visa application will give you a date and a location on where to pick it up, but do not forget. And don't lose it. Now, one thing that is a little bit different entering the country as a non-tourist is you don't need to prove your return flight. Your visa may be for 2 years, maybe for 5 years. There's obviously no reason why you would need to prove a return flight. However, if you are entering the UK with a family member or a friend, and maybe they're there to help you get set up and they're gonna have like a little holiday with you, and then they'll go back home and you'll stay on your visa. That is very common. Not what I did, but I know a lot of people who have done it that way. It is important that the person accompanying you has a flight home. Now, one of the things that the border agents are very much aware of is they do not want people staying in the UK that are not allowed to. So you are obviously allowed to stay because you have a visa. You don't need to prove that you're leaving yet, but your friend or your family member will need to prove that they are going to leave, because the border agent may be suspicious that you're coming in a visa, they're coming as a tourist, but they're gonna stay with you longer than they are allowed. Now, one time, this really freaked me out. Not to freak people out, I'm just sharing my story. I was standing at the border agent little kiosk, and they're doing their mystery stuff on the computer. And they're quite close, like with all the other ones. So the guy next to me was a young Australian. He had just made the flight all the way from Australia. And it sounded like he was on a visa for the UK. It ended and he left. He was coming back as a tourist because there were some things that he hadn't like tied up, or some of his stuff was still here or something like that. So he was going to enter as a tourist to sort of finish up some stuff and then go back to Australia. And the border agent was not buying it and basically said, when you were here before and before your visa ended, you should have wrapped everything up, because I think now you're going to enter and you're going to resume the life that you had in the UK and you're not allowed. And the poor guy, I felt so anxious because it really sounded like they were going to put him back on a flight back to Australia. So obviously that's a bit of a different situation because he was on a visa before and he was trying to enter as a tourist. But one of the big things that the border agents are looking for is whether they think you are going to try and stay in the UK or overstay your welcome or whatever. So if you are traveling with someone, make sure they have evidence of a return flight. All right? Just a little hot tip. And of course, it's not just the UK that is concerned about that sort of thing. I have had, I'm Canadian, that came out weird. Talking today is really hard. I'm Canadian. My partner is English. We went to Canada and he was actually pulled aside pretty much at gunpoint, not joking, because he forgot to provide evidence that he was leaving Canada, like his return flight. And they were concerned that he was going to try and stay in Canada illegally with me. And they actually wrote up like it's kind of like a warrant for his arrest if he did not leave Canada by a certain point. It was all very scary. So just saying, to avoid the traumatic experience, if you need to, make sure you have a return flight and you bring evidence of it so you can just avoid all the drama. Now, after you enter the UK for the first time on your new visa, you're good to go. Make sure to pick up your permit from the post office, and then any other time you leave the country and come back, you don't necessarily need to speak to a border agent unless you have some sort of weird issue. Otherwise, you should be able to go through the electronic gates like everybody else. It's just that first time you need to see somebody so they can do their mystery stuff on the computer. Now, a lot of this process has been interrupted by a certain global situation that we are going through right now. So I will put a link in the description of some government advice from the UK government about visa holders, and if something goes wrong, what should you do and who should you get in contact with and all that fun stuff. So I'll put a link down below. Also, make sure you're up to date on whether you need to provide vaccination proof and all that kind of stuff. So just be checking the website for those sort of additional bits of information. But otherwise, the general process is what I've been through, what I've explained. It's stressful. I always make it so much more stressful than it needs to be. My overarching advice for this whole situation is, guess what? Take a deep breath, honey. It's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine. All the hard stuff has already been done. It's just this last hurdle. Just be polite, be respectful. These poor border agents, I'm sure, have to deal with a lot of awfulness. So I just try to be extremely polite, answer the questions that they ask you. You don't need to give them information they haven't asked for. Just do what they say, smile, say please and thank you, and then get out of there. So that has been my experience entering the UK as a foreigner on a visa for the first time. I've done it a handful of times, and I will probably do it again in the future. If you have any questions about the process, any potential foreigners out there, any potential expats, leave a comment down below and hopefully I can give you some unprofessional advice. As always, thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, bye!